Mr. Cerrone,
Here.
Dr. Martin,
Here.
Dr. Murillo,
Here.
Dr. Polak,
Here.
Miss Robinson,
Present.
Miss C. Here. Miss Wenma.
Present.
I'll stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you may.
All right. Good evening, board.
We good?
Side news.
All right. So good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to do something new. We're going to spotlight a student, and we are going to welcome Mr. Braden Thompson to join us up at the table here. Braden is a senior at Oswego High School who possesses a very unique talent. His ability to solve a Rubik's Cube, even blindfolded, is truly amazing. Recently, he participated in the Cubing World Championships in Seattle, where he placed 12th in the 3x3 blindfold category. Since his first competition 3 years ago, he has competed in 41 competitions across the United States, breaking several state records in the blindfold categories. So we want to thank you for joining us this evening, Braden. We'd love for you to do a little brief demonstration of your skills for us.
Do you want to say something?
Grab the mic. They can't hear you on the mic.
There you go.
Hello?
There you go.
Good. And it's
Someone
on
like
video,
to
too.
scramble it for
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. Look at her.
Look at her going.
Now come to every single board meeting.
Now, I'm going to make a special
yeah.
request. When you're doing, if you wouldn't mind saying it so that our viewers online can see what
The
you're about to, the
camera's right
camera's
there.
right behind you. So
Okay.
if you would stand maybe next to Dr. Kincaid when you're doing it.
Okay. I'll do with my eyes open
You guys
first.
can Go over here. You're good?
Wow. Are you kidding me?
I
thought
think
that
they
was
have
like
some
YouTube
questions
G-
for you.
I thought it was like AI technology.
I'll take one more volunteer. I'll do a blindfolded this time.
Oh, really? We got a second round? Let's do it.
Hey, go. Scramble it. Yeah.
Yeah, go scramble it.
Go.
Oh, we're not. Dr. Pollard.
Go scramble it.
Do you need something for the blindfold? Oh, you're ready. You're always ready.
He's a world champion.
I see. Ready to go. Oh my.
I have to look at it, scramble it. Solve it.
I'm gonna record you as well. Now,
Two in a row.
Just trying to help you out.
It's all right. We're going to try. Look at it beforehand. Because that's impressive.
stop.
Thank you all.
Would you take questions, Braden? I'm sure some board members have lots of questions.
Yep.
How do you do that blindfolded? I mean, how do you?
Okay, so I look at the cube and then I look at a certain spot that I know, and then I'll see this piece goes to this spot, and then this piece goes to that spot, and then I'll do that all around the cube. And for each like sequence of pieces going to certain places, there's a certain sequence of moves that I do.
Wow.
Well, yeah, that's extreme process.
thanks for.
What do you want to do when you grow up? That's my question.
Right now I'm looking at mechanical engineering.
Yeah. Other question.
So somebody picking up a Rubik's Cube for the first time.
Oh, that's a
What do
good
you
question.
what do you kind of you know?
Beginner advice.
Yeah, beginner,
Beginner
advice.
advice.
Yeah.
Don't be discouraged because a lot of people are like, oh, I can never do that. I remember when I was in fifth grade and I learned how to solve it, I went on YouTube and saw the people doing it in 10 seconds or whatever. I saw people doing it blindfolded. I was like, oh, I can never do that. But here I am.
Where were you when you first picked up the Rubik's Cube? Or what was your first? Yeah, what was your
I
first?
picked it up in, I think it was fourth grade. I was like, I want to figure out how to solve this. But then I looked on YouTube and I genuinely thought, oh, I couldn't do this. And then, as I said in the news interview,
Yeah.
in fifth grade, my teacher, Miss Tusaki, had the whole class do a thing where we all learned how to solve it together. And that's when I first solved it, and I just kept wanting to get faster.
Oh,
Wow, that's awesome.
that's really cool.
Board, we would love for you to join him for a photo real quick, if
we'd
you
love
wouldn't
to.
mind making your way to the
Wait,
middle.
yeah, one more thing.
Oh,
to-
yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'll go a little more in depth on what I do.
Sure.
Each, like I said, a piece will go to a certain spot. I actually assign that piece a certain letter, and I make combinations of several different letters. And the way that I'll remember those is that each combination of letters is a certain word. So DG is a dog, and I'll think of a dog. And then when I keep going around the cube, I'll place that image in a room that I'm familiar with, so that way I remember it better. And this is, I said, a whole technique. It's called Roman rooms that memory athletes and stuff use.
Wow.
Okay, so that was something that you learned from others
YouTube.
doing it?
From
sounds
YouTube, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Either way, I mean, it's still.
Incredible.
I gotta look into that.
YouTube,
I
Dominic.
can't remember anything. Dogs in a room. Okay. All right. So.
All right.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Your phone.
Oh. Okay. We're going to, this is.
Yep.
Moving on to 5.2, phase 2 long range facility plan. Or 5.1.
Okay. Good evening, board. Just under a year ago, I think it is, we started our partnership with White and Company, and this evening we are welcomed by 3 members of the team, and we want to please introduce yourself and want to thank you for the work that you've been leading as we start to think about the facility needs of our district. Beyond thinking about them, we've been impacted by them significantly, and so your timing could not be more apropos as we think about our future. And so thank you so much for all the hard work, really being on the ground and working with our team.
Well, thank you. So I'm Stuart Brodsky. I'm the project director principal for the project, and I'll let my colleagues here introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Nidhi Shah. I'm a architect and project manager for this project.
Good evening. I'm Steve Shear, architect and design principal.
Okay, do we have a clicker? All right. So we've been here before, and our colleague Brad Paulson and our partners McKinstry were here, about a month and a half ago, I think, in June. And they presented phase one. We'll show you in a moment, remind you in a moment. You've seen that diagram probably many times at this point about the 3 phases of how a master plan works. And then we also want to remind you, Beyond Your Base is a part of White and Company, and they work with our clients to explore funding and help build consensus about the solutions with the community and with the public. So where are we? Okay, so table of contents. So a long-range facility plan is kind of like solving a Rubik's Cube. It's definitely as difficult and complex, but it takes a lot longer, about a year roughly, instead of 5 seconds or 10 seconds or however long it took. But tonight we're going to kind of walk you through that process. And again, we're in phase 2. We're going to focus on that, touch on some of the other things, and then kind of roll along. Oh, I'm doing this one. Okay, I've already forgotten. It's a good thing I don't have a Rubik's Cube up here. All right, so facility conditions assessment really focuses on the nuts and the bolts, which are all too important to you, as we know. And we've completed that part of it, reported back in June, and now we are finishing up, and proud to say we're have completed phase 2, which is called education alignment. So it really looks at your educational vision for the future, and which is highly tied, you'll see in a moment, to your strategic plan, and then forecast to the future, what would it take to move toward that so you are prepared for the future. And then we are now moving into the 3rd phase, which is when we take those ideas, those needs assessments, and all the information we're going to show you tonight, and really come up with solutions of how you might solve that. And think of it as a framework, a flexible framework that can last a number of years and adapt, but stay true to a set of what we'll talk about, guiding planning principles. Yep.
All right, just to kind of remind you all of the overall schedule, we are at that red dot right now, so we're kind of switching from phase 2 to phase 3. You know, we know you guys, we kind of started this process last year. We knew your strategic plan was kind of being created and wrapped up in March. We started the phase 1 portion last November, and we wrapped that up in June with the board meeting and presentation. We've been working throughout this year and wrapping up this summer phase 2, and we are starting phase 3 currently, and we will be presenting that at the November board meeting. Kind of an overall overview of the district. We are kind of encompass 22 buildings within our report. These are all your educational buildings, about 3.2 million square feet of building and 16,800 students approximately. We really looked at this in different types. So we have elementary schools, you have 13 total. We looked at both your prototypes, which is a majority of the buildings, and then your non-prototypical, which is Boulder Hill and Long Beach. So those are 4 categories we looked at in terms of elementary. Then we looked at your middle schools in 2 categories, or your prototypical buildings, which are 4 of your schools, and then Thompson. We looked at the high schools individually, the early childhood center individually, and then we kind of named the programs within the district administration center 308 extension programs. It's fun coming up with that title. So that includes your Eastview Academy, Pathways, and Goal. So when you look at how we review this in the plan, and kind of when we talk about all the buildings, those are the categories we align these with. We kind of take a look at your building age. So you can see their oldest buildings are from 1957, and a lot of your buildings, about 80% were built within the last 21 years. So that really means it's a really good time for strategic plan, because all your buildings in the 20 to 30 year marks, a lot of your systems need to be replaced. It's time to take a look at updating your buildings, and then we can look at the educational portion of it while we're doing all the wholesale changes. Just in terms of the schedule, in terms of the educational alignment schedule, like I said, we began in January, and it really began with the process of engaging all the principals of your schools. So we met with all the principals. We gave them a packet, basically a survey, kind of getting all the documentation of the types of spaces they have in their building, what works, what doesn't work. And we met with them individually, each together, after they finished this survey in February. So we met with every single principal for each program. We also sent out teacher surveys, which we got back the next month as well. In March and April, we had educational alignment workshops, which Stuart will kind of go into what that means in the future slides. But we met with 5 different groups of staff and administration to kind of review each building type and what was working educationally in each building type. We visited about 12 buildings, so all of your one of each prototype and all your non-prototypical buildings. We met with the steering committee, which is a group of administrators and community members who are helping guide the long-range plan process. We met in May and in July a few times, and we're meeting throughout the process to kind of make sure we're aligned with what the district priorities are. And here we are today at the board meeting.
Okay, so you just heard a little bit of a summary of the process and all the steps and all the engagement and the different ways we gathered information. We wanted to just touch on in a little bit more detail. There's really five different groups, and those 5 groups collectively represent the whole district. So that's the way we've been gathering information. And from the Board of Education down to community engagement, which will really begin in phase 3, as you're going to see in a moment in September. The heart of gathering data in phase 2 in educational alignment has really been with the Education Leadership Committee, which is a group, a construct you already had in place. And then we formed academic advisory groups for the purpose of this planning process. And they represent each of the major levels or building types. And we had really intensive hands-on workshops with them that you're gonna see in a moment, and with the Education Leadership Committee, and through that really formed the vision. So I think the main point here is that any good planning process is gonna look in many different dimensions at how it gathers information, and we're about to step into that next step in a much broader way with the community, and kind of excited about that actually. Next. So this just kind of puts it to numbers, nothing more than that. A lot of meetings, a lot of survey responses, a lot of participants. And what we find is it's important to almost, in a way, build in redundancy in a process, because some people feel more comfortable expressing themselves in a workshop, so we're going to get the quality of information, and others are very busy, and particularly teachers, and survey responses are able to give us broad and finite detail all at the same time in a very thorough way. And we've assembled all that information, so when we produce our final report, you'll see a lot of that reside within the appendix, where we can really dig deep, and then we'll do executive summaries and summaries by level. Okay, so throughout the whole process, we've been organizing the way that we gather information and interact and look at the buildings through 4 lenses: space organization and efficiency, the learning environment, site and access, and safety and security. And in a way, the physical conditions kind of fall into these as well. But we really were looking at these from the education alignment standpoint. So how well do your buildings allow you to fulfill the criteria? And for each of those 4 major categories, there's at least 2 or 3 subcategories. And for each of those, you can see those bullet points. And within each of those bullet points, there were anywhere from 4 to 6 points, key indicators of compliance with that particular topic that were binary choices that we were looking at. And eventually we'll have a data form, an actual score that'll come out of that. But the main purpose in doing that, frankly, isn't really to say a number is good or bad. A number is just an indicator how well a building is meeting these criteria. And the reason this is a part of what's called the alignment rubric, the purpose in building this rubric and customizing it was at the extension or at the end of those workshops where we had gathered all that information and really could formulate your vision and make sure the tool that we're using to measure them was a reflection of that. So we'd be happy to answer any more questions about those in detail as we move through this and we kind of keep going. So why don't we hit the next one? We mentioned the workshops. So when we gathered the academic advisory groups and the education leadership committee and put them all together, we really had three exercises. And the first one, in a way, was the most important part of it, called learning practices. So we've assembled at White and developed a series of basically engagement tools. They're custom tools we created that really explore through research-based modalities what learning practices occur within the realm of teaching and learning in the United States and around the world, and then allowed the participants to really focus on those and say, are we doing those now and want to keep them? Are we not doing this and want to adopt it? Or is it something that we're doing or not doing and don't want to have? And they were allowed to really break that down, look at it carefully, and then we utilized your portrait of a learner, your strategic plan, and had a series of exercises to help them apply how those learning practices supported each and every one of your 5 portraits of a learner. And then through that process, they also came up with 2 really great ideas we'll show you in a moment. The second exercise was the learner experience. It dug a little bit deeper. It looked a little bit at spatial types of rooms and spaces that would support a vision, and then collectively describe what that learner experience should be in a building. And we did that through, again, a series of tools that we've developed and organized uniquely for our clients and for your process. And then finally, the 6-word story, a summary exercise to collectively talk about, say it's 5-10 years down the road, the master plan has been completed. How would you describe the district? It's that type of thing. And through that, we're able to get both qualitative and quantitative information about the way that the participants saw the vision for the future. Next. And there'll be a slide, by the way, in your packet that has a little bit more detail about that. We're not going to go over that tonight. Again, be happy to answer any questions. So I mentioned a moment ago, you see these blue boxes. They'll look familiar to you. They're the portrait of your learner. So we're going to be meeting with the Education Leadership Committee this month and digging deep into a series of action statements we've created about what that means as a physical environment. And we're going to gather reflection and information about that so that we can make sure that the guiding, we're calling the guiding planning principles, are reflective of the way you see the future of the district's learning environments. And then interestingly, through those activities, 2 new ones evolved. They're colored green up there: active and informed citizen, ambassador of the environment and wellness. And I can tell you, in our experience, we're seeing those trends all over the country, and it was very validating to see your leaders, the mentors for your students, really bringing those ideas and elevating them, because that's what they're seeing in the values of your students. What do we have next?
All right, we're going to kind of dig deeper into now what are our summary and findings for your buildings. So we kind of categorize this in 4 different categories: elementary, junior high school, high schools, and then your extension program. So you'll see this four times in this way. The first slide here is really about all your elementary schools as a whole. So when we see this slide, it applies to every elementary school. And then the second slide will be a little bit more particular about all the different building types. So we're looking at the 4 categories, which is space, organization, efficiency, learning environment, site and access, and safety and security. And you'll see some of these kind of go throughout all the different building types as well. But I think we'll kind of point on the major ones in each category, so I don't have to read through every single one. But I think the biggest thing, 2 things here, is create grade level based learning communities. So that really means you have a first grade, a second grade community, and all the resources that that grade level needs is within their area. So and that it really depends on what the district wants. So that could mean small group rooms, related services within there, special ed spaces, collaboration spaces, which is a connected learning space, a living room that you want to have to activate your corridor. So that's kind of the major takeaway from your space organization and efficiency. This really helps create a school community, and we've really seen in the last, education has changed. There's a lot more related services. I think after COVID as well, there's just so much more besides just a classroom that a student needs in a space, and so making sure they have all those spaces in a way that is functional for the building is a key. The learning environment is a little bit more about the space individually and what the categories that has. So one big topic was really about improving flexibility and adaptability. So that could mean you have really flexible furniture in your room so you can do different types of group work. We talked a lot about individual learning, whole group learning, pairs, having furniture that's flexible to do that, and having the technology in your room that helps you do that as well. We also have some results from the surveys in there. We saw a lot about temperature control in there, acoustics, and then another part is really your special education programs. You have a lot of special education programs within your buildings, which is great, but creating the adequate space and the currently aligned space for what your curriculum is. A big other one that we really heard about is really STEAM and creating a STEAM maker space within your buildings and robotics. It's a really big program that people have been talking about in the district is what we've heard, and having an individual space for that for students to thrive in would be really ideal. Site and access, I think the biggest one was outdoor learning spaces. Currently we just have playgrounds outside, and safety and security was just about enhancing, just keeping it up to date to what we're doing today. We've heard a lot of PA systems too. That was something we heard about.
Needy, just for a second, Dr. Kincaid or Dr. Paul or Dr. Wall, anything you want to add to this particular area? I think there have been this was an area of great discussion as our principals start to think about it, especially around career technical education. Dr. Kincaid, do you want to open up or anything related to this?
As both Dr. Calgati and Needy have mentioned, our STEAM and makerspaces have been an area of interest through the work of Dr. Paul and her team, Dr. Campbell and her team. We've actually introduced during the summer some experiences for our students to come in and really expand their learning and knowledge. Really partnered with this also is the kind of reimagining of the libraries and aligning from elementary to junior high to high school with exposure to what would become the future of college and career. So wanting to make sure that the spaces are connected to learning, that they really see that hands-on interaction is what the students are expressing, the teachers are expressing. So really trying to align both curriculum and the learning space and the environment to that. So, Dr. Paul, any additional?
Anything, Dr. Wall?
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Wall, did you want to add anything? Okay. Yeah, I will just echo that and just add that for our school administrators, and when you look across the district, these buildings were all built kind of very quickly for almost all of our buildings, as you know. And so where we were almost 20 years ago, right, and where we are today is very different and what we're envisioning for the future. And so this particular slide, I think, is really exciting. We think about what we've learned from our educators and starting to re-envision the future. And I also think it's that some of our buildings have some of the extremely important fundamentals. Some of them we're struggling with roofs. We've got challenges in terms of just basic safety and health, life safety. And so I think this became a very important exercise that you all led. And I think the vitality of the kind of energy that the space felt, it was very exciting to hear from you all as you engage in those debriefs and meeting teachers. When we visiting our schools last year, we did school connections. And so to hear the voices of our teachers talk about what they wanted to see and to see those now show up here is really important. Thank you for making sure that we got those voices. And it's not the end yet, but definitely it was an important laying of that foundation.
Well, and I think that that's an important point of it's not the end yet. Through the work of Dr. Dubiel's team last year,
Yes.
with some of the realignment of our English learner and our special education programs. We really wanted to make sure as we were going through this process of the long range facility planning, leading into that student assignment, that we made sure that we really anchored our special education programs to make sure that we weren't moving students continuously around. The other thing that I think kind of not yet, but we've taken steps to improving is noted under the safety and security with our entrances.
Absolutely.
So that's been some of the focus over the last 2 years of enhancing both the technical and the audio for our visitors coming in and also our school personnel to help manage that. So it was good to see kind of the recognition of some of the work that's been done, but also the need and the want to continue that for improving both in and out of the school environment.
So many of these things we've been talking about are through lanes that you're going to see reflect in different ways when we get to junior high and high school. A couple things I wanted to highlight, just kind of keep a lookout for, because it was consistent. There's a consistent affinity toward the idea of creating school community. We heard that at all levels. And so at an elementary level, it means grade-based learning communities. So when we do the planning and we plan for the planning, meaning programming, we're going to make sure there's the right kind of space to create a sense of community, some space to break out and connect and be able to see into those spaces. And then the second one, strong affinity for connection to the outdoors and to have outdoor learning space, not just outdoor play and recreation and physical education, which is equally important, but to be able to get outside. These are topics, by the way, that really did evolve and become more important out of COVID. So we're continuing to see that importance really elevate. And again, we saw it at all levels.
Can I just ask one clarifying question about the outdoor learning spaces? Because I see it comes up in other areas as well. I heard you clarify a little bit that it's not necessarily just about, is my mic on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's not just about PE, correct? So we're not talking about just creating outdoor learning spaces for physical education, but maybe for like science exploration or like some social emotional type of activities. Is that correct? And what would be some examples of an outdoor learning space that would support something apart from PE?
Yeah, I might let Steve chime in, but just the idea of literally creating a classroom outside. We have done that, and to the extent that there's access to wireless technology, that there's surfaces you can actually write on. The furniture often tends to be more heavy, and you want to avoid it moving around because it's outside. But the idea that you can replicate what you're doing inside, because the daylight, the fresh air, the access to seeing green, seeing to the horizon, and the plants are what we call biophilic principles that promote health and wellness and students being calm.
Yeah.
So those are our primary. And then Steve, anything?
Well, science is a good example, but then it provides the opportunity to tie some of the curriculum to some of the things you have outside. The idea of science and farm to table, or agriculture, or sustainability and sunlight and daylight. So it just gives you direct access to more the natural resource you have on all your campuses too.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Or just math. You know, I was just really happy to see that surfaced.
Yeah.
I've been pushing for more outdoor learning past
Yeah.
probably 15 years. So
It's helpful to have some examples. I can imagine, you mentioned like an outdoor classroom. I can imagine, I don't know what we will imagine together, but like some outdoor seating, like a circle area or something like that where students could sit and things like that. Can you also clarify what activate hallways means?
Yeah, I think so. Some schools kind of already have this in your district. So if you look at Wolf's Crossing, Fox Chase, you have that upper library area where there's a really wide corridor. Students are using that as group spaces to do projects, and we saw stuff posted up over there. And the thought is just to make it designated that way, so you could put some furniture in there. You
Okay.
could create an alcove where you have a whiteboard or a digital display you could project. So you activate your hallway in terms of when there's kids out, during class, they can go out there and work on something.
Okay. Thank you.
So that was kind of the overall elementary. So that applies to all elementary schools. We wanted to kind of dig in a little bit to each different type of prototype, the two prototypes, Boulder Hill and Long Beach. So I think when we look at Fox Chase, the biggest thing we saw for prototype 1 was really about the library space and that it's open. And I think the idea we were talking about is how do we program around that to make sure the programs adjacent are, a STEAM lab or something like that, or something that really makes sense to be adjacent to the library, and creating programming that helps align those spaces and the type of space you want there. They have a couple buildings that have preschool. So talking about you have preschool programs, that's a different set of standards you need, different size of classrooms, different resources. So how do we get to the two Long Beach and I believe it's Liquid Creek, in terms of getting their that portion of the building where there's preschool aligned. When we look at spaces like Southbury, it was really about the gym and the cafeteria. That was the biggest thing we heard from all the principals and the teachers is you only have you have a gym/cafeteria. If you have kind of them running at the same time, it's really difficult for certain students to concentrate or to kind of talk and have a good experience during lunch. Boulder Hill and Long Beach, both are your older buildings. I think a big thing that was discussed was really about comprehensive updates and innovations there, really looking at the facility condition assessment along with educational alignment, taking a hard look at if there's some global item we need to take a look at to get this building up to the next level. And I think Long Beach also had that elementary, the early childhood program, so the playground in both those buildings as well. And I think Long Beach had such a great opportunity with these circles and creating had a pretty big library and just kind of opening that up and maybe creating a common. So there's a lot of great spaces within these buildings, and how do we utilize them to the best that we can? That's what we have already there. Good question.
That library is great over there, but it just the roof keeps leaking.
And we know we've heard, this past week has been a really tough time for the district. So we are taking all that into account too when we look at this all globally, right? We know you've had a lot of your 3 buildings, 2 high schools in Long Beach had a difficult time last week. So
Yeah.
that's something we consider as well when we look at these buildings. Anything else? Anyone questions on elementary? If we move to junior high.
So looking at the junior high buildings, again, most of them are based off of that one prototype design with the exception of Thompson. But even with Thompson, there were some common findings that we found across the board at the at the junior high level. One is we talked about grade level communities at the elementary school. In a similar way, we're talking about how can the junior highs be organized or space allocated differently to allow for this sort of teaming structure to happen at the junior high schools, and then if any space is needed to sort of help create that sort of teaming approach to learning. Also, specifically at the prototype buildings, but even so at Thompson, there's spaces that are was once computer labs or multi-purpose rooms that actually lend themselves as an opportunity when we think about either that reorganization or the introduction of more STEAM kind of based programming at the junior high. A lot of the common themes are shared at the elementary level, and they just sort of graduated up to the junior high level. But I'll make a specific note about this idea of STEAM, maker, and robotics. That holds true at the junior high level too. There's great programming with the FACS program, the applied arts, the art program, but what new offerings in terms of robotics and maker can we achieve through the space at the junior high level? And then lots of conversations across the board about the classrooms. How can they be made more adaptable through the furniture, through the vertical writing surfaces on the wall, through the technology in the room, anything down to the thermal comfort of the students and the acoustics in the room. And like at the elementary school, we are also keeping tabs on sort of the unique features from each of the schools. Namely, the Murphy prototype, that's the one that has a lot of former computer lab spaces adjacent to the library. There are multi-purpose rooms that are already sort of at the heart of the school. That's one that, in what ways can we activate those spaces to support some of this programming ideas? There's some specific art labs that are, could function a little bit better, that offer some expansion of the art room there at Murphy. But otherwise, that prototype design, you know, we often say it has good bones in terms of how it's laid out. There's sort of open communal areas in the corners of the buildings that maybe with the reduced use of lockers could be more activated to create this idea of connected learning. Thompson's a unique one, but even then, there's some unique features like it's got a really main wide hallway that you circulate the school through. That could be opportunity to find space for this idea of either connected learning or just activating the space. This one, because it's the outlier and of a different vintage, might lend itself to just more comprehensive modernization because it is the different school. And then certain special program classrooms might need just some better functionality just to align with the needs of those students and what they need. But just kind of creating those common spaces just might have to happen in different ways just because they're two different layout designs. And then as we move to the high school level, you start to see some of the common themes kind of move up. Here at the high school level, we're thinking about building organizations by department. I think for the most part, both high schools were organized by department. There might be a few anomalies that, in what ways can we use this long-range plan to get departments better grouped together in the high school so that there's like-minded curriculum happening in different areas of the building. Same notion about connected learning. In what ways can we repurpose spaces or leverage as much square footage of the existing building as we can to sort of create this idea of connected learning. At both campuses, the spaces for student services and related services, they've just been incrementally kind of growing and taking over adjacent spaces. In what ways can we consolidate those, but still make them very commonplace for the students? So access to deans, guidance, related services is very common for students to have access to those resources. And just the idea of school identity and wayfinding at each campus came up. So where we talked about STEAM at the junior high and elementary level, lots of conversations around career technical education at the high school level. What are sort of the offerings that you are offering at the high school? What do you want to continue to offer? And in what ways can the spaces be made more functional to support those offerings? And maybe done in a way that really puts those spaces like on display where students could get really excited about the different offerings that are career focused at each of the high schools. Re-envisioning libraries, classrooms, those kind of carried up to the top. And then likewise, we kind of looked at some of the specific differences between each high school campus. There's a lag, I get it. So as Oswego High, it's the older of the building. It's one that's sort of received additions over time. So it's grown very organically and very densely. So things like daylighting in all the classrooms was compromised over time. Some of the efficiency and wayfinding was compromised. So that's one that actually might lend itself to more comprehensive improvements just because of the age of the building. It's the older building and it's undergone more additions over time. One specific nuance about Oswego High is that the main office is actually separated from the visitor entrance. In what ways can we maybe get those two functions together just to ease visitor access to administrators and make that more commonplace? But still large hallways that are currently being used for a good number of locker bays that offer opportunities to sort of activate those in different ways at Oswego High. And there's clearly some science labs that are newer, but then there's still those original science labs that are probably past due for updating to make them in line with some of the newer ones that are there. And then fine arts and auditorium spaces at Oswego High, along with some traffic studies that we want to do in terms of the parking and vehicular approach to the high school. At East, same story about the administrative space. There are moments of congestion. Things like the event entry gets a little congested in terms of wayfinding throughout the building. And then the weight room and fitness room, their functionality and both supervision kind of could be something that we could look at and is a challenge at that campus. And then just right out here, the common spaces, things like acoustics, supervision, safety, lighting, things that's a kind of a heart of the school that we want to take a close look at in phase 3 in the planning approach.
Next, we're going to go through the extension programs. So we're talking about Pathways, Goal, and Eastview Academy, the district administration building. So kind of these are all pretty much the same. It's really talking about how do we incorporate all 3 programs into one facility while still maintaining all these categories and making sure the students get what they need and the programs get what they need when they're sharing a building. So this is another one that's an older building, and it's really a thought of comprehensive modernization, really to make it so these 3 programs can really shine within one space. So this one we kind of delved into a little bit more of the different areas. So Eastview, I think the biggest thing, space and organization, was you have K through 12 all in one corridor. So how do we create separation between those students, those ages? They don't have a separate library. Their libraries in their, I believe their cafeteria space, their gym space. The main office, I know you guys did some renovations recently to that, but there's still, you already kind of need another office space there. You know, a secure playground for this area. You're right off a main road, so really creating some safety for that. Sensory and breakout spaces. So right now you're using full-size classrooms for things for de-escalation and things like that. So how do we utilize your space better so you can get more breakout space and calming areas instead of utilizing a full-size classroom? You know, and then creating art and music therapy environments. You have a student store that would like to be expanded. And then the last 2 is really about, you know, when you come up to the building, we don't really know where Eastview is versus where Goal is, where Pathways versus the district administration building. So really designating the exterior entrances to make it clear where to enter, where to come in. And then creating, you know, secure vestibules for each area. Because these students, you know, you can't just leave the door open. You might have someone that runs, and you really need their safety and consideration. So creating a secure vestibule with a transaction window so you cannot get into the building without being, you know, checked in would be ideal. That kind of applies to all. Pathways is really another program where there is a lot of multi-use spaces, so kind of making some designated spaces in terms of lunch areas and staff areas would be ideal. You have a multi-purpose room or some type of, sorry, I'm like trying to read, you know, in terms of getting some type of micro business or something like that for the students to engage in when they're really trying to learn life skills, creating a studio apartment as well, so they can actually learn laundry, kitchenette. There's a small space there right now, but it's, you know, there's room for expansion. And then, like, I think there's no indoor recreation or fitness center. They don't use the gym within the building. It's kind of a clear cross. That's really used for goal and pathway or an EVA. So getting some type of recreation for that, those students would be ideal as well. Similar story about the exterior parking entrance, as well as the secure vestibule. Another part is, you know, some of these programs intersect with the district administration programs, so really creating designated areas so they're not overlapping, so these students kind of have their privacy as well. Goal really needed a little. The classrooms and things like that were similar to the rest of the buildings, but PE offerings, just a little bit more on that end, would be ideal there. Connectivity and transparency are kind of in your own corridor. There's no commons area for these students, so they don't really have a place that they go eat lunch or a place that they can go and have a high school experience, so that would be ideal there as well. And then another area where I believe you have to card access through a few areas, but really creating a secure vestibule for checking in, because I believe you check in the same location you check in for EVA currently for goal. So that's that facility right now. Any questions about extension programs? All right.
There's a lot, yeah.
Okay, lots of info. We're almost through it. So you remember one of the lenses we looked at during the educational alignment was space organization and building layout. A subset of that is looking at the building capacity at each of your campus. And the first part of that is taking information from the demographer, RSP, and taking their information in terms of enrollment growth projections, where density is throughout the district. This is one of the heat maps they provided that kind of demonstrates that, you know, your highest density of students is on the northern end of the district. They also provided projected 5-year enrollments at each of the schools. So we kind of took the information they had and started rolling it into a comparison metric at each of the grade levels. So typically what we find for planning purposes and even just peer districts in the state is that elementary schools kind of fall around this 130 square foot per student metric. It's kind of one of the first metrics we look at, size in a building and checking capacity. So we took both the current enrollments at the school and the projected enrollments and kind of took stock of where the buildings are falling relative to that metric. And then what it does, it kind of just highlights areas that we've sort of highlighted in red. Those are schools that maybe we want to take a closer look at to see how they're falling across that metric. I would say that this is just one of many metric. It isn't like a definitive metric that could give full diagnosis of a building that it's overcrowded or undercrowded. There might be a school that has special programs and therefore smaller class sizes that might change that number. There might be schools that just aren't efficiently laid out and they have extra hallway space that might sway that number. But you know, if this is just the checkup of a building, we're just kind of taking the height and weight, but we can't give a full diagnosis just off of this metric.
Can I invite Dr. Kincaid to add something there? I think if you wanted to add a few comments about this work here, because I know you've been working very closely with our demographer and our school leaders and with White & Company as we think about this. I just want to make sure we frame that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So we have been looking at student enrollment projections, have been having those conversations, and definitely as you have aligned space allocations, we are also seeing some need based on some of our growth just in our community, especially around our Wolf's Crossing corridor and South Ferry. So over the next couple of months, as we bring in more and more information about our long-range facility planning, we really want our student assignment to go hand in hand with your findings and conclusions, and use that information to work not only with our buildings but our community to readjust and accommodate to maximize our student learning opportunities. So we will be looking to follow essentially right behind you with our student assignment discussions.
And we continue sort of doing this first check at all grade levels, you know, seeing that the junior highs kind of are close to and on par with that metric. You'll see, though, that the metric standard kind of goes up as students get older, they get bigger, there's more program offering. So we're kind of comparing it to that 180 square foot per student is sort of the benchmark that we see at the junior high level. And then at the high school level, that square footage gets even bigger and probably even more variable too. You know, you can imagine you add a field house to a high school, it could sway that number, or a large auditorium. So the range of square foot per student at the high school level is getting bigger and bigger. But again, as a first check, this is something we kind of take stock of as we go into phase 3 in the planning of these buildings. So that's looking at the overall building square footage, but we also want to take into account the individual sizes of classrooms and learning spaces. So we've collected data in not only your peer districts in the state, but also capacity, best practice standards from your peer state guidelines, even some from Illinois State Board on capacity of rooms. So those are sort of the benchmark square foot per student when we look at individual classrooms. And what we're looking at this is to prepare us for phase 3 when it comes to planning. So when we take your current multipliers and assume that you're going to max out every classroom, which we know isn't the case, there's a number of school buildings that sort of fall in the red. And basically what this tells us that the existing school building classroom size aren't really sized according to that benchmark to accommodate a full class size of 28, 30. But the good news is we know that most of the cases you're not maxing out to the fullest every classroom, and more so your average is much lower than that. So what we're doing from a planning standpoint as we get into phase 3, we're actually taking account what can your existing classroom sizes accommodate, and that's what we're going to use when we long range plan into phase 3. So it's a way of sort of building in the flexibility for you to sort of accommodate enrollment changes. It's a tough term, but in a way sort of future-proof the capacity of each building, so you have flexibility in terms of the number of students and the capacities kind of built into each school.
So kind of wrapping up with a district-wide consideration. So when we looked at this, all these categories combined, these are the big takeaways we had. So we'll have this slide and then a summary slide, but kind of the big items that kind of affect the district as a whole and when we take into consideration during phase 3 planning. The first, we've kind of talked about just recently, class size and reassignment. That really makes a difference if you're doing a 24 versus 28 students and how many classrooms that needs and the size of those classrooms. And then also just the reassignment portion that we're working with Dr. Kincaid and RSP on. The next one is really teaming and learning community structure. So we talked about that. How do you want your buildings to be organized? What's in a learning community and what's the definition of the programming there? Next big one was CTE programs and makerspace and STEAM alignment. You know, how do we want that to look in each grade level and throughout the district? What does that mean at the high schools in terms of, do we have a capstone at each high school? Do you have a separate CTE building? There's lots of different options. Or do we just enhance what you have now? Lots of different ways we could look at the CTE program from each grade level. Early childhood is a conversation. You have 2 satellite buildings and 1 standalone building. So what's the future of your early childhood? Is that growing? Is that staying the same? Is it staying where it is now? And those considerations. We talked about your 308 extension programs, what we want to see how we want to see those buildings laid out, what those students, their future is, and how we want to see those in the future. Then one part we did talk about with Dr. Kincaid a lot, and they've been working with RSP, and you guys already had a shuffle, is the location of your special programs. So STARS, deaf, hard of hearing, those programs, and if they're staying where they are, and how flexible we want in the future, if they're moving in 5 years, 10 years, we want to make sure when we look at this long-range plan, we give you flexibility to move those around if that's what you need, or if we're locating in one spot. Another one we didn't touch on, but we'd have heard a lot about throughout is athletics and activities and outdoor play. So that means your playgrounds in your elementary schools or outdoor areas in your junior high school, such as soccer fields, which we know is used a lot, and then your athletic fields at your high schools, which we've really heard a lot from the community and from the district about. And then we kind of touched base on this as well when we looked at these older buildings that we have that aren't the prototypical buildings, but what comprehensive modernizations do we want to take into consideration when doing this long range plan? So this kind of just summarizes what we talked about. And a lot of these kind of tie together because your district-wide considerations are really what drives the long range plan. The first is really about capacity. So what the RSP's findings are, and really we looked at Southbury was the biggest one that really had the enrollment growth and what that means for the district in the future. The class size consideration that we just talked about as well, the learning communities and what that means for your program and how your buildings change and the square footage changes and the layout changes for that. CT and STEAM, connected learning spaces. So really talking about group rooms, living rooms, how do we want in the high schools for connected learning to happen, as well as elementary and middle schools, junior high school, sorry. I think the 2 big program locations is what's the future of early childhood and then your extension programs. Those really make a big shift if you're relocating them, creating one building, adding another building. That'll really change the plan depending on how we move forward with that. Technology and communication systems was something we talked about. I think we have a pretty standard set throughout the district, but is there somewhere in the future you want to enhance that for the technology? We always talk about security and kind of what the future of security is and how you want to keep modernizing. Like we said earlier, the district's really taken strides to do that already, and it's in a good shape, but what's the next step of that? And the final one was really, if we're looking at comprehensive modernization, where do we want to target that, and how do we want to move forward with those? Because those are not just small feats, right? For looking at an entire building as a whole, that's some money cost and some time there.
Next. So an important part of phase 3 is not just what are those ideas, but what they cost and how we go about looking at them. So we're proposing an idea of looking at it as a series of four major components. And the reason to do this is that you saw a lot of detail, right? In the last few slides, it's really complicated. There's little things here, larger things there. When we begin to look at it as a series of components, it allows us to do budgeting in a more organized and consistent way so that we can make sure we're not missing things, and we can also understand how things affect each other. And so the big one is if a building needed air conditioning and it also needed fire protection sprinklers, and you're taking the ceilings down, you begin to get toward a comprehensive remodeling. So you're not any longer gonna look at just what if we replace a mechanical unit in kind, we're looking at whole systems. So the first component is really the capital repairs and infrastructure. So the physical, most of the work that you saw in the physical conditions assessment falls into this category. And then we take a critical look at it and say, were we just replacing something, or were we modernizing it to meet new code or to meet new needs? Like air conditioning and technology are examples. You could put heating and airflow in a building, but ideally you're air conditioning in today's day. And with technology, you're not just putting in wireless, you're looking at extended bandwidth for multiple devices, the ability for students to interact with multiple displays throughout every space. So there's different things that wouldn't just be replacement in kind if something is wearing out. The second category really lives in the realm of what we just showed you for this whole presentation tonight. Educational enhancements and modernization. So are we really making changes to spaces, which is component 2A? Are we modernizing finishes and casework? Because if the bones of a building, a term that kind of I thought I heard tonight, if you have a really good building, it's structured really well, and there's not a lot of walls that need indoors that need to change, significant improvements that really do impact students could be made by simply looking at finishes and casework aesthetically, functionally with casework. There's a lot of great things that can be done. And then finally, furniture. Furniture is a universal. It's a great one because you can do it over time. You can make a gigantic impact on the learning environment. So a lot of improvements in what we talked about tonight live within component 2. Component 3 are a lot of the things that Needy was just talking about, whether it's a renovation within a building, a complete system replacement, reconfigurations, maybe envelope modernization, and then additions. So are some of the buildings needing to expand in place? An addition would fall into this kind of component 3. And then finally, component 4 is really dealing with safety and security, any enhancements to secure entrances, exterior envelope that keeps the perimeter very safe and secure, lighting, things like that. And then also what happens inside the building. Do all the classrooms lock down the way that you want? Do you have the cameras and the intrusion detection and the kind of electronic systems that really make a big difference and communication, mass notification, things like that. So we will look at the budgeting in this manner, and it will allow us to get a very organized and very clear, focused snapshot of where money is being applied. And then when we try to prioritize, we can look at the good, better, best of these various components. So then you can make value decisions about where you really want to focus dollars, which we know, not that it wouldn't be in any planning, but we know that's going to be really important, is to have really careful prioritization so you're good stewards of the money that needs to be applied to make the district infrastructure ready for the next 50 to 100 years. So I believe that concludes the formal part. We do have some next steps, I bet. Yes. We mentioned community engagement. That week of September 8th, sessions 1 and 2, focusing primarily on a lot of the things you heard tonight, as well as physical conditions. But we are going to structure it so that we can get unique feedback on some of the things that we know you want to really hear from the community about. And then during October, a little more than a month after that, we will do 3 and 4. And the reason there's 2 is just to give 2 different opportunities for the public, two different times, 2 different locations, so that you can have the most, I think the big thing was making sure the process is equitable and allows access for everyone. And that session will focus on, we'll really dig into, number one, reporting back what we heard in the first one. And then secondly, what do some of those solutions and approaches, what does that framework look like? And perhaps get some prioritization. You can't really prioritize until you know what you're prioritizing. So that will allow us in that session to really hear what is one thing more important than another. Sometimes there are exercises we can do with the community that are fun that begin to get them thinking. We have constraints. If you have constraints, how do you think creatively about what you should choose? And then finally, we'll be back with you on the 17th for a more comprehensive presentation of the whole package. And then on the 8th of December for adoption of the long-range facility plan framework. And questions? More questions?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you all. And I want to just frame something for the board and really get your reflection and questions you may have. I want to just, this last week and a half, we've had a chance to visit multiple classrooms. And nothing gets us more excited than walking to classrooms and seeing how educators have prepared those spaces to receive students. So when the student enters that space, they say, I matter. I'm important. I am seen. You prepared for me. This is our chance. This is our chance as a district and for the board to really lead and champion really what I would say is at the beginning of this next phase of our district saying to our students collectively, you matter. And our buildings and our spaces deserve to be the best so that we can champion who you are. That our educators walk into spaces and say, this space matters to me. I was thought of because I matter, and I can then in turn make sure that our students feel that they matter. And so our community and parents, so board, your questions as you hear, this is, we timed this because we wanted this juxtaposition, honestly, in relation to also the start of the school year, because we really want to be able to connect those two concepts. This is not a summertime conversation. This is a now conversation.
Yeah.
Randy, do you have any questions?
So just a quick comment in regards to the community engagement that is going to be upcoming. I can understand how granular this process is, and I appreciate just all the context. However, for the community engagement, will that be very high level? So it's just kind of like quick hits so the community can understand it?
Yeah, we actually met today to go over all this. And yeah, we're going to be pretty high level. We're going to kind of go over the steps in the process, but not get really granular into these. So you won't see the slides with the elementary school items and then the specific school items. It'll be high level, just district wide.
Thank you for all the information. Lots to dig into. I asked a couple questions earlier, but two other things actually. Is BroCon not in this study? BroCon?
It is in the study, yeah.
It is?
Mm-hmm. And we put it in the elementary school category.
Oh, it's in the elementary category.
Yeah, so we do have, we didn't see it on that Foursquare, but we did include it because, and we talked to, it was part of the bigger considerations, district-wide considerations.
Okay.
So that was one of those. Because we have pre-K in the elementary satellite building, so we categorize that together. But we can focus in on that a little bit more if you need us to.
Yeah, it is. It's would be one of the unique prototypes, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it would be good to add something in here or to have information about that building as well, so that they know that they're seen. And to Dr. Helgati's point, that that space is important as well. I know preschool is a big topic, as you highlighted at the end of the presentation as well. The other question I think the conversation about space and demographics is really interesting. So this might be a question for our administration rather than you all, but I know that our last demographic study indicated that we're okay on space, but we might need to transition some programs or some lines and things like that, possibly in the future, so that everyone has access to an appropriate space. Do we have a timeline for how often we do that? Because I know markets change and other buildings might pop up. and how that might impact future planning in that area.
So we are currently aligning. We've been meeting with RSP. As Needy mentioned earlier, they are recalculating our instructional capacity
Okay.
based on the alignment of our special education programs.
Okay.
As you mentioned, Southbury at our last presentation is projected to be over capacity, but then there are some schools that are very, very close to capacity. So as our timeline, as I mentioned, will start in the next few weeks and be very similar in terms of both school and community engagement and then plans. We're looking really to go out the next 5 and then 6 to 10. So that will be the questions that we will be bringing forward of, are we wanting to repeat cycles every 3 to 4 years, or do we want to make some, what type or level of movements would we want to do now and anticipation, where, or opposed to the depth of proposals. So
Okay.
that will be forthcoming in the next few weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
That's all I have.
I did have a couple. First off, as far as what I'm hearing is the meetings or the sessions that you're having with the community or with teachers, facilitator does a great job. Seems very knowledgeable, looking for appropriate feedback. So kind of well done. As far as the Southbury getting over capacity, we've said it here a couple times. We are not looking at special programs, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So the only discussion has been, do we need an additional site? We currently have one site for skills. So, but in terms of moving the locations of our STARS program, we are looking to leave our special programs where we the recommendations from last year are in place right now. So we wanted to make sure that that was our phase 1, and then we would build around that.
And so any consideration for special programs going into another building would be just so that if that were to happen, that it'd be easily transitioned, correct? So that we have spaces that are appropriate for all kids, essentially. And then we had this conversation about pre-K. So I know that this probably isn't, you'd be looking at the infrastructure, the spaces, expanding pre-K, for example, would be a large project. So would we kind of be able to see, if because you had a good, better, best, right type scenarios. I would assume the best scenario would include expanding our pre-K program, things like that. Would there be, additional revenue considerations? It's kind of just that whole picture. I don't know what we would see in this phase.
So expanding early childhood would definitely have revenue implications.
Everybody looks at the CFO right now.
Well, I know it has
I would
expensive
say-
implications, but I'm
Correct.
wondering if it has revenue implications as well.
So
Revenue, yeah. So
more expense, I would think. Right now, our revenue, our PFA is our current state allocated grant is consistent. There has not been any additional funding
Okay.
that we have received in PFA, so it would require more expenditures to expand our current early childhood.
Yeah, we would have to. Okay.
Yeah. And just to be clear, as it stands right now, the grant doesn't even come close to covering the cost of operating the program.
I know.
So-
And we don't even, we don't advertise, and we still have growing population, and I'd like for all our kids to have that opportunity, but that's maybe an eventuality, but not something to not consider.
Yeah, we typically have waiting lists by the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay. I think everybody else said that they're good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Have a great night. See if I can get the number right this time. 5-2. All right, moving to 5-2. We got 25-26 school year story, beginning highlights. So we got a
Yeah. So this is a quick, as we were brainstorming as a senior leadership team, we were talking about how do we want to bring you some of those first day highlights. We've captured some videos, some photos, we've had some really high highs and some really, tough moments in these first few days. So this is kind of just a quick conglomeration to give you a glimpse into a lot of what's happened, some voices from across the system, from students to staff, leaders. We just thought this was a great way to kind of bring you up to speed on where we're at. So this is our start of the year highlight video for you.
great.
I am a parent in the community, but I'm also now back as a staff member teaching second grade. And these past 6 days, meeting these new students have been amazing and quite the adventure in second grade. The mentorship program is great here in 308. My mentor is actually next door to me, so it's kind of nice to be able to pick her brain if there's something that I'm unfamiliar with, or even just to share a funny little story that's gone on. And I hope everyone has a wonderful school year.
I am a math teacher here at Plank Junior High, and my first several days of teaching have been really great. Really had a great time getting to know all the students, working with my new colleagues. Everyone's been so nice and so helpful here, and I've been having a great time so far. My favorite part about working in 308, well, I grew up in Oswego. I think my favorite part is that I get to be part of the community I live in. I get to work here too, and get to see the students in the community, and and give back to 308 since they gave me so much when I was a student.
The 25-26 school year is underway here in School District 308, and already we have experienced excitement and opportunity everywhere we turn. Every day, our students come with smiling faces to our 24 sites, ready to learn and be with their teachers. As with every year, we have encountered some challenges, but again, like every year, we have faced those by collaborating with our communities to solve our problems. As we have worked to be more fiscally responsible and efficient with our transportation, we have worked with individual families and communities to ensure that the safety of our students is always at the top of our priorities.
And something I find good about having our backpacks in our lockers is that it can give us a little bit more time or stamina to think, because you have to think, how can you get to your locker in time and still be able to come back in time without being tardy? It can give you a little bit more brain power because you have to think about it more often.
I think it's easier because normally the backpacks are really heavy, so they put a lot of weight on your shoulders. So they're sometimes they cause back problems. That's what happened to me because I had my back was always sore from carrying the backpack. So now that I don't have to carry the backpack and keep them in my locker, it's a lot easier.
The main thing that I really like about not having backpacks always on us is I have a few very populated classes with my classmates, and the classrooms are very much more open because we don't have backpacks all the way everywhere.
Love having no backpacks in the classroom because it frees up a lot of space and kids are much more organized with bringing just one folder, one notebook, and just their materials for that class to the classroom. So it's been great. Students are doing a great job with it, and I encourage it for the rest of the year.
I learned that I didn't have changed without my backpack is I'm very much more organized, and I have a lot of time to get to class, and it really helps me out a lot, and I don't have a backpack full of junk.
All right, and Luciana?
What I learned from not having backpacks, I learned how to properly manage my time going class to class. And also, I thought it would be so bad, I'll be late to every single class, but it's really not that bad if you learn how to properly organize your time and properly spend it.
For our 6th graders, backpacks aren't needed. Like, it's no different. They don't know any changes, so it's been perfect for them. They have been coming with their materials, being more responsible, being prepared for class, and really succeeding.
Went down stairwells, went through the flooring, in between walls, that type of thing, and then just spread from there down into the 2nd floor.
Just saw kids in the school a couple of days ago, and then just to see this happen over the weekend was quite shocking.
That we have had a very successful start to the school year, specifically regarding our 5 brand new STARS classrooms that we've opened this year at Prairie Point Elementary. Without the support of the board and our district leaders in resource allocation, ensuring appropriate curriculum for students, ensuring supports for students, and ensuring the staffing for the program to not only start successfully but continue to run successfully is noticed every single day. And without those commitments in action, we would not be seeing the success that we are. So we are deeply thankful to your commitment to putting students first.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Going to public comment. Do we have any?
Yes. Yes, we have 5.
Okay. All right. On behalf of the Board of Education. Make sure it's. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank the public for attending tonight's meeting. We value the feedback we receive from our members of the public and encourage everyone to take an active interest in their public school system. Individuals interested in speaking to the board this evening are asked to have completed a comment card and presented it to the secretary to the board. When the secretary calls your name, I ask that you come to the microphone, state your name for the public record, and provide your feedback. Please note that comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. The board does not participate in discussion during public comment. Comments should address the Board of Education as a whole and not be directed to an individual board member, audience, or staff member. Follow-up to your questions or concerns may be addressed by administration through the contact information provided on the comment card. Thank you.
Kelly Welch.
Hello. Does this work? Okay.
Yep.
I've never done this before, so I apologize if I'm a little nervous here, but I just wanted to bring a safety concern to the board's attention with transportation. So I know we just watched that lovely video where they talked about the challenges of transportation and how they're working with the community. That is not the experience that I have had with transportation this year or last year. Transportation has allowed a student on the bus that has assaulted now multiple students on the bus over the years. The student was removed from the bus and placed on an alternative transport for a while, but I have been informed this year that he will be back on the bus with my student, who is one of the students that was assaulted by this child. I have reached out to transportation over a dozen times, left messages with both the The director of transportation, the assistant director of transportation, the route coordinator for my particular bus route, not one person has reached back out to me. I have also left a message with the superintendent and haven't heard back either in that regard. My principal has done a fantastic job of trying to work with transportation and with me to work through this issue. But even she is hitting roadblocks with transportation at this point. And it just comes across as transportation does not want to be bothered by my issue. Whether or not there are alternate circumstances, I'm sure there is. But because of the lack of communication, they have not made me aware of what these are. And at this point, I'm not sure where else to go. So I am here asking for your guys' assistance in hopefully getting this rectified. Not only is it a safety concern for my own child, but as I said, multiple students have been assaulted. We have one of the most crowded bus routes for our school. At times, the students are 3 to a seat. And so having that additional safety issue aboard that bus is, in my opinion, extreme. So hopefully we'll be able to get somewhere from here. But I figured you guys were my next step before the district becomes liable for something else happening on this bus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Traeger.
Hi, thank you. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I want to give a quick thanks to the people around the table who were out at our schools welcoming families and at Panther Fest, and a thanks to our building staff responding to those weather emergencies last week. Before I get to my main point, I did want to ask if we could do a survey of elementary parents regarding curriculum night. Many of us would like to see it be brought back. It's not working to combine it with preview night, especially in like dual language. As the grades get higher, there are changes in percentages of instruction time and how that's managed. And a lot of us were saying like, hey, did you see on the calendar where's curriculum night? And then we remembered like, oh, they took it away last year. So maybe we could survey, because I think there's a lot of parents that maybe would like to see that brought back. And I really enjoyed OHS's curriculum night. It's really exciting to see the teachers that my students are going to have. So my main point is that September is Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month. And again, I encourage our district to recognize this month. We recognize autism awareness in our district, and the prevalence of FASD is actually 1.5 to 2 times greater than autism. And our communications director has been good in the past, utilizing FASD United as a resource for information about Awareness Month. And I like to share new information because I know that I bring this up, fairly often. So we usually state the prevalence conservatively estimated is 1 in 20, which would be basically 1 in each classroom who's had prenatal alcohol exposure. So there are newer studies that have come out. October of 21, the data was showing a prevalence in the sample was actually 7.1%, which is 1 in 14. So that's quite a leap up from the 1 in 20. And if you think about food allergies, the prevalence of food allergies of a student having any kind of food allergy is 1 in 13. So we're really close to that. And we are used to seeing the signs on the classrooms, like this is an allergy aware classroom, and we're accommodating those students. Behavioral risk factor surveillance system in 2022, there was a study found that nearly 1 in 7 pregnant people reported drinking alcohol, and 1 in 20 reported binge drinking in that month. There's you guys probably know the ABCD study. It's the cognition brain study for adolescents. Based on parental reports, nearly 26% of almost 10,000 adolescents participating were prenatally exposed to alcohol. And then this is new from May of 2025. Compared with February 2020, consumption in April and November of 2020 increased by 36 and 39%. Exceeding the drinking guidelines, increased by 27 and 39% in April and November. And what's really interesting is that these included Women with children younger than 5 years old, the increase was 323%. Why am I giving you numbers from 2020 and 2021? Because our kindergartners who are entering our district this year and next year were born during that time. That's profound. We need our staff, general ed and special ed, to learn how to identify students who may have been prenatally exposed and how to intervene and accommodate more effectively. Many of these students have issues with impulse control, executive function, planning, judgment, sensory needs, social challenges that look different from what we see in autism, and learning challenges. And if we're not in the habit of thinking brain function, then we often attribute these neurosymptoms as intentional behaviors. Our reward and consequence charts, point level systems, FBAs, FIPS, and cognitive behavioral methods are often not very effective for students whose brains function differently. And this will affect not just the teachers, but also the deans and the resource officers, mental health counselors, and student support personnel who need to consider brain function when interacting with students. I do have information about a free statewide FASD training for caregivers and professionals that's coming to Illinois in October. When we saw earlier the slides where there was a portrait of a learner, I want to thank you for continuing to be open to learning about this specific neurodivergence, which is also a prenatal trauma. Because if we're open to learning about that, we can better support students on that journey to becoming that portrait of a learner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alicia Hansen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Alicia Hansen. I've been a resident here for over 20 years. I've graduated 2 of my children from SD308 schools, and I still have 1 left. And I'm also been in education for over 20 years. However, this is my first time speaking as a parent on this side. So the fact that I'm here means that I'm kind of at the end of my rope. I have no other choice but to bring it to this platform. Like one of the previous parents, my biggest concern is transportation. And I've tried all the other avenues. Hers might be a little more significant, but I am dealing with transportation for the past 4 years. And it's specifically the routes from Churchill and Plank with my son, and they've been consistently 30 to 45 minutes late. So this year I tried to head it off and problem solve it and collaborate, because collaboration is one of your core values. And guess what? I can't get a hold of anyone. No one. I've tried calling, so then I called central office and I left a detailed message last Monday. No one has called me back. And I'm spending in my own school day hours trying to problem solve this. The only one that's working with me is the admin at my son's school, and he's been amazing. But his hands are tied. My husband and I have like rearranged schedules, dropped things at work because we have sports appointments to get to, and I can't wait an hour to an hour and a half for my son to get off the bus. And I know that may sound petty, but we have busy lives, and I don't want to keep him there longer than he has to be, nor do the staff want them there any longer. I'm really trying to problem solve. And so last Friday, my son used his common sense and he got on another bus. Probably not the right thing to do, but that bus dropped 5 houses from us 10 minutes before his supposedly time he's supposed to be dropped off. I called and asked because I finally got a hold of somebody to be switched to that route. And they kind of gave me the runaround and said to check Monday. Well, he's still not switched. I still don't have a functional route. They told me he's not to ride that bus. And this is what's working. I said, we've solved the problem. We have it in a timely manner. So we're back to square one. I don't have a time frame. I don't have a solution. And this is year 4. If this was just me dealing with a week of it, I get it. This is the start of the school year. I can hang on. This is 4 years. So we've got 2 problems here. It's transportation. And my second issue I really want to bring is a systematic approach to addressing concerns. We cannot run a district successfully if we don't have systems and procedures in place. And that really is what's concerning to me now, because I started with transportation, and now I'm even more concerned that I can't get a hold of anybody or the right people to work with. And all I'm trying to do is help you solve a problem. I'm not here to give you a problem, I'm here to help you try to solve it with me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Bernardoni.
Sorry.
Good evening. This is my second year in the district. Last year, when my daughter started kindergarten at Boulder Hill, we had an excellent experience with her bus driver. Unfortunately, this school year began with a serious issue that highlights broader systemic concerns, which are related to the other speakers. On the very first day of school, my daughter's bus did not stop to let her off at her assigned bus stop. I had to run after the bus with my 4-year-old son, screaming and waving my arms to try to get it to stop. I had to rely on a neighbor who at that time was a stranger to me to watch my son so I could continue running, screaming after the bus. Eventually, another parent who had heard me had to step in front of the bus so I could get on to get my 6-year-old daughter. This all happened after my son and I had already been waiting in the sun for 50 minutes with no communication about a delay, and the bus app was not working. I reported what happened right away by calling the transportation line and using the district website to message the transportation director, but I still have not heard back from anyone to discuss what happened. Since then, things have improved with a different driver, even though daily the bus is consistently later than our scheduled pickup and drop-off times, but the larger problem remains. On that same first day, some children were not dropped off until after 7 p.m. This is more than 3 hours after school had ended. And from what I've heard from other parents, this is not new. This is becoming something that we as parents are expected to accept at the start of every school year. But this is not acceptable. What is the industry standard for delays in the first 2 weeks of school? Where does our district fit in the industry standard? Is anyone measuring this and tracking where our district is year over year when it comes to delays and communicating with parents in a timely manner? Our students and families deserve better. Drivers need to be properly supported and trained so that they know their routes and stops. Parents need timely updates about these delays, and we all need accountability. When concerns are raised, they must be acknowledged and addressed. So tonight, I am asking, what concrete steps will this district take to fix these problems? How will you ensure this does not happen again? And when will parents get clear, timely communication that we can count on?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lydia.
Good evening. I'm a little nervous. This is my first time doing this, so I don't do very well with public speaking. But as they said, my name is Lydia, and I'm a parent of a first grader and a second grader at Churchill. This is our 3rd year at the school. In previous years, there have been some challenges with transportation, such as delay arrival times and inconsistent communication through the app or through email. But we've always managed to work through them. I understand there could be occasional issues that need to be addressed, and we have been very patient with this process. However, this school year has been gone in a way that both has been very stressful and overwhelming for our family. Less than 1 week before school started, I was informed that my daughter is no longer qualified for school transportation. This came as a shock. My daughters have attended the same daycare for 4 years, and for the last 3 years have always had the bus transportation to and from school to daycare. Because of the sudden change, my husband and I have been forced to rearrange our work schedules for the last month in order to manage pickups and drop-offs. We've also had to seek out alternative daycare options that could provide transportation. But after contacting 3 different centers, we have had no success. I now find myself facing the very real possibility of having to quit my job because of the lack of transportation that I do not have for my children. I also want to note that I am not the only parent impacted. There are at least 3 other families in our daycare that are facing the same situation. This shows that the decision has a widespread effect on working parents in our community. 3 key facts are a lack of communication. Parents aren't almost given enough notice for major changes. Why was the decision not communicated earlier in the summer when we would have had enough time to make arrangements? Alternative pickup forms. Why do these forms exist if parents aren't allowed to use them as intended to designate a safe pickup and drop off at a daycare? 3, impact on working families. While I understand that students who live less than 1 mile from school may not qualify under certain guidelines, many of us rely heavily on daycare as a school transportations so we can balance work and family responsibilities. On behalf of myself and fellow parents, I respectfully ask for the board to reconsider the policy as it applies to families who uses daycare. Reliable transportation is not just a convenience, it is a necessity for working parents who want to ensure that their children are transported safely and consistently. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. 7.1.
Okay.
The superintendent report today.
All right. Good evening, board. As we gather for our first board meeting, first of all, I want to thank again our communications team and our educators and staff across the district for the support in making that really wonderful delight video that really centers the voices of our staff in preparing. This has really been a remarkable start to the year as we've been able to visit schools and really get to hear the voices of our educators and our students and our staff as we launch the year. We've had the privilege of visiting every school since the first day and to really begin, and we are continuing to do so until we're able to visit every single classroom. What stands out the most is really the dedication of our staff. We truly believe that we have an incredibly hardworking and dedicated staff who really centered the needs of our students as we prepare for the school year, and then we're able to receive them. Today, Mary Jo got into a classroom where we were celebrating a student's birthday and to see some of the wonderful ways in which our teachers are already moving right into writing in each of their classrooms, and quite impressed actually by the writing that we already saw so early in first grade. Of course, this year began with what I would say was a significant challenges across the system. Within the first couple of days, we saw flood damage in several of our schools. Our operations teams, district leaders, and school staff put in countless hours to minimize the impact. I want to especially thank the Oswego East High School staff and students for pivoting to e-learning for 2 days. This is not easy, but it really allowed for our staff to really engage in really the appropriate amount of remediation and making sure that our spaces were dry and clean in order to receive students back in the building. At Oswego High School, it's been an even more pronounced challenge, actually, as we continue to face the remediation and the repairs related to our gym. That was significantly impacted, and that gym will remain closed for a few weeks as that work is completed. We did see, we also had an unrelated repair issue that's come up related to our Oswego East High School Performing Arts Center. That's going to be out of use for a period of time. We are working with our school district leadership team and neighboring districts to make sure that students' capacity and experience of performing arts is not impacted. And across the system, I want to say that the collaboration has been excellent as we start to think about solutions. On a positive note, this board made a decision in early summer to support our decision to reach out to get repairs done for Trauber Junior High School. And those units were found to be beyond repair, and we were able to have some temporary system, and thanks to decent weather, we were not too heavily impacted. And now those, we have a working HVAC. We're able to replace the chillers there. These are not, again, these are not isolated challenges, whether it's from our transportation challenges, which we've heard this evening are significant, or our building repairs. Many of our facilities have been really struggling due to being built during the same era, which many of our systems are aging, requiring significant repairs and replacements at the same time. Years of deferred preventive maintenance driven by the financial constraints in this district are now showing up in very real ways. That's why tonight, as you heard, we were able to hear from our long-range facility plan in terms of phase 2, and really to think about ways in which we can take the next approach that's sustainable and to ensure that we have not only safe, but also functional and adaptable spaces that are really responsive to the needs of our students. This past year, we, in relation to this also, as I mentioned, our new transportation director discovered in the mid-year that we're using an antiquated DOS system, for example. If you remember those floppy disks, those DOS systems are what essentially our transportation system was using, and we've started the process of migrating for improved. Now, granted, we have not been able to finalize that change in that migration, but that is one of the functions of why planning for the future today, we see that with our buildings, makes the same difference for our transportation in any of our systems. Through it all, what gives me confidence is the resilience of our staff, our students, and our families. Together, we have faced challenges head on, and together, we will continue to build bright futures. And one of those bright futures that we are celebrating today as a result of that work, I'm honored to share that this year our district is celebrating 20 years of the anniversary of our dual language program. Yes, that is worthy of applause. This is a program, as some of you may recall, our former board member, Jared Ploger, always talked about the history. This was a program that was almost removed from our district. And thanks to the leadership of the board, and I would say many dedicated staff members and community members, we centered the dual language program and we brought it back full swing. And so we're just getting started, 20 years. But this dynamic program for our students becomes to become biliterate and multicultural in an increasingly globalized world is incredibly important. Please join the BPAC. Join us on September 13th from 10 to 12 p.m. at the Prairie Point Pavilion. For additional information about the event, please visit the Multilingual Learners page on our website, and I couldn't be more proud to be in the district that has been able to celebrate this really milestone of achievement. And we're just getting started. So with that, there are so many things to celebrate, so it is our tradition that we invite board members, separate from their comments, to share some of the good news of things happening in the district, and I welcome some of those reflections now.
Churchill Obigun, a third grade student at Boulder Hill Elementary School, was recognized as part of the National Math Stars 2025 cohort. Churchill is part of a select group chosen from thousands of nominations who will receive a long-term package from this 10-year academic initiative that supports gifted young mathematicians. This is truly a life-changing experience. Congratulations, Churchill. And if I remember, it's worth about $100,000.
Yes.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, really, congratulations.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Madison McNana, I do apologize if I said that incorrectly, a senior at OHS, has been selected to have her artwork on display as a part of the Extra Credit Art Educator and Student Exhibition, 2025 in Chicago. This exhibition, presented by Art Connected Ed and Art Space Chicago, will feature an opening reception on Friday, September 5th, and closing reception on Friday, September 26th. Congratulations, Madison.
Next, Delia Akia, OEHS class of 2025, received a silver medal from the 48th Annual Afro-Academic, Cultural, Technological, and Scientific Olympics Awards Ceremony hosted by the NAACP. Delia was recognized in the Earth and Space Science category with her project, which of course we all do, soil monitoring, using Arduino technology to monitor soil moisture, pH, and CO2 levels with agricultural contaminants. Duh. Congratulations,
Here we
Delia.
go. Yeah, great. Good job.
All right. Prior to the first day of school, Hunt Club Elementary School held a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Stage, the Center for Creative Thinking. The Stage is a space for new ideas, problem solving, collaboration, and living out Hunt Club's school mission. We're excited to see how the Cougars utilize this room throughout this school year and beyond.
Long Beach Elementary School has adopted a house system which will allow them to group students into different teams for a number of activities. The Lions recently held a house sorting ceremony where students spun a wheel to see which team they are now part of. We are eager to learn more about the teamwork and new connections to be formed as a result of these 4 houses.
Jordan Ware and Kayla Haswell, freshmen at OEHS, were busy at work the last several months. They dedicated time to planning for and designing the beautiful new blacktop games at Long Beach Elementary School for their Girl Scout Silver Project. Thank you for your contributions to the students of our district. Jordan and Kayla, we are proud of you.
As a reminder, both OHS and OEHS are participating in T-Mobile's Friday night 5G Lights sweepstakes. Over the next several weeks, these schools will be looking for your help in posting to social media, particularly Instagram and X, using the hashtags hashtag FN5GL and hashtag sweepstakes, as well as tagging the official T-Mobile and OHS and or OEHS accounts. Check out both schools' social media pages for more information.
I think we won $5,000.
Well, you did.
last
Oh, we
time,
did,
and-
yeah. And this
Yeah.
time.
And I noticed that a lot of times when we're doing kind of these things where all it takes is participation, and Oswego tends to do a pretty good job. It's just, so I think we landed somebody on like Sports Illustrated, high school player of the week or whatever by like a wide margin. So just do whatever this said. And we're moving on to board comments. Erica?
I don't have anything.
Neither do I.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to thank the teams that were out dealing with the storm damage on the schools. I know that was like a 24-hour round-the-clock job, and that everybody was working really hard to get things ready, or as ready as could be, for the students as quickly as possible. So thank you to all those folks.
Brandy stepped away.
Okay. Actually, I have a couple things, but most of these we've already touched on. Dr. Calgatti mentioned the school visits. I think we still owe Old Post a visit.
It's on the list.
So it was, as he said, it was great seeing all the kids come back at the beginning of the year, especially the first couple days when there were kids that were really excited and kids that were just like, this was the last place they wanted to be, but it was fun nonetheless. So that was good. I think Dr. Calgatti went to all of them. I think I was able to make it to 17 of the schools. Also wanted to congratulate Plank and all the other schools that are celebrating their 20th anniversary as BPAC. It's quite a milestone, and it's funny how, well, it's not funny how all of them are celebrating 20 years at the same time. Goes back to kind of the growth in the area. I was also able to get to both the Blue and Silver over at East and Panther Fest over at OH for the family celebrations at the beginning of the year. Great meeting a lot of people. Got to catch a couple of scrimmages for girls flag football for both teams. So that's going to be pretty exciting to watch. I think I'm going to try to make it to the game on Wednesday at OE. And then finally, and the reason for the Gear It Forward shirt is because Gear It Forward had their open house this past Saturday at their location on Stonehill Road. After these students always amaze me at what they're able to do, and I'm happy to report that it appears, from what I can tell and what I was told anecdotally, it's now just about half and half ladies and gentlemen. So we're kind of at 50-50. It used to be kind of an all-male sport. But again, they are so excited. They're gearing up for the new season, and I look forward to hearing more from them in the not too distant future. So that's it for me.
Brandy? Do you have any comments?
No comment.
Okay. I was just thinking about it with the 20 years of dual language. I didn't have anything prepared. 20 years ago, there was maybe few, dual language programs in the entire state. I mean, it was like Woodstock. It was very hard to find. So Oswego was kind of like ahead of the game on that. And lo and behold, it's kind of, yeah, it's the gold standard in EL programming. And the state continues to, push for that because it's increases academic achievement. So that's the whole goal, right? So I don't know. Yeah, it was, it's just thinking back. 20 years ago, I didn't live here, but it was dang close at this point, 18 years ago. So, nobody else, right? 8.1. We're going to move on to consent agenda. Right? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
Yes, you can. I make a motion to approve all items under consent, including 8.1 minutes from the Board of Education meeting on August 11th, 2025, open and closed sessions. 8.2 to acknowledge the FOIA requests received by the district. 8.3 to approve field trips for overnight and or more than 200 miles. 8.4 to acknowledge and accept a donation in the amount of $4,025 received by the district from an anonymous donor at Becoming to support Ascend Student Equity Conference.
Any discussion?
Second.
Oh, what? Yep. Any discussion? Thank you, Erica.
I had a question, or maybe just a comment about the donation. I appreciate any donation to our school district, especially to support a program like Ascend that I know has great impact. I wonder a little bit about accepting anonymous donations, just in terms of transparency. And then I also just wonder about accepting, my understanding is that Becoming is a religious organization that I think from my research aligns with several of our values, but I just wonder about, the separation of church and state in regard to the acceptance of that donation. I'm still going to vote yes for it, but I just wanted to lay that out as a consideration moving forward. And the one other thing is, I think we could maybe, I don't know if the donation is from an individual or if it is from the church as a whole.
It's from an individual. The individual is affiliated with that. I do think it's an important question that we should go to policy, and I would put that as a question that we should bring as a policy agenda and topic to explore further. I think these are the kinds of reasons why we have community policy committees, and then also bring to the board then for follow-up review and reflection on this. I think how we think about, and I'm jumping, I don't know if you wanted me to address it now, but I would say that I think any of these opportunities there are a number of ways in which we think about those donations. And so definitely the individual wants to remain anonymous. And so I would say that the board has a right to think about how it wants to accept those donations.
I think that's the perfect move, actually, to think about it through policy. And I just want to express my appreciation for the anonymous donor out there, because obviously we appreciate all that, any support. But I think it is something to put on our policy agenda. That's all.
Everybody else? Anybody else? All right.
Miss C?
Aye.
Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Miss Robinson?
Aye.
Dr. Polak?
Aye.
Mr. Cerrone?
Aye.
Miss Wenmouth?
Aye.
Dr. Murillo?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to 9.1, financial statements.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to review very quickly the financial information. It's for the end of June. As you can see in the treasurer's report, we ended the month with 108 million. And that actually doesn't take into account the audit adjustment that will inevitably be done. And when our audit is completed around October. But that's what is reflected in there. We get the 50% of our property taxes in June, and we get the other 50% in September. So what you see here is slightly overstated because some of that revenue that is shown in the fund balance will be reallocated to prior fiscal year. And then the next document is the district's portfolio. We, at the end of June, we're at $96.4 million, which is one of our high points. But then we will wait till September when we get the other 50% of our revenue. And then we will start creating a really detailed cash flow and then start investing that money and putting it to work. And we will come back after that is done and share that with the board at the October board meeting. The budget memo shows that there's really nothing as far as revenue and expenses that is out of the ordinary. Is really in line with what we expect at that time. And the same thing with the budget report, all funds shows that revenue as well as expenses are in line with what we projected. And the one thing I want to point out is the CPIU. CPIU for June shows that for the 12-month from June of 24 to June of 25, the index rose by 22.7%, which, you know, is trending high, but we know we follow that, but we don't really pay too much attention to it. What it does is it impacts how much we spend for the things that we buy as a district. But this is not the month that will have the significant impact on our revenue source from property taxes. And the last financial document is the activity fund summary from all our buildings. This is funds that are raised and spent in our individual buildings, but we, as a district, we monitor that to make sure the expenditures are in line with board policy. But at the end of it, what I can say is revenue and expenditures for June were on track with what we expected. There were no anomaly in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, and I think I know the answer to this, but when it comes to the activity funds, the individual schools raise the funds themselves. Is that what?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
there's not an allocation at the beginning of the year. Okay. Okay.
But we're still responsible for making sure that the funds are spent in accordance to board policy.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
I have two questions regarding the budget memo.
Sure.
Excuse me. First question is for the purchase services, since they are significantly down, is there a timing difference and are we realizing permanent savings?
We actually are realizing some savings. What we try to do is, as we get towards the end of the year, we work with our cost managers and just communicate to them to make sure that expenditures have to be absolutely needed in order for them to incur. And if it's something that can be delayed for the next fiscal year, let's do that. So that's a concerted effort on our part to limit expenditures that we deem as not being necessary for us to be able to function as a district.
Thank you. And then the second question, still regarding the budget memo, the other objects increased nearly by $500K. Can you provide a breakdown?
Yeah, that is really related to mostly tuition payments, out of district tuition payment that we pay for our place kids. And those tend to be paid at the end of the fiscal year. So that is pretty typical of what we see at the end of the year.
Now, when you say typical, that's just across the board, like what we've seen as a benchmark for the past 3 years? Because when we say outplacement, I'm assuming that's our special ed kids,
Yeah.
right? So that $500K, we've seen that for numerous years at this point.
Yes, that's not out of the ordinary.
And do we have any opportunities at this point?
Do we have one?
Opportunities.
I don't know.
What do you mean by opportunity?
So the increase of $500K, right?
Mhm.
So how can we keep some of these kiddos into our district?
Oh.
So we don't have the expenditure of that
So
$500K.
I'm going to defer to the program person here, but based on my experience and knowledge with outplacement of students, we do everything we can to educate our kids in district. But there are certain services that some of our students, our special needs student may have, that we just don't have the ability to be able to provide those services to them. Some of them require residential specialized services that we don't have the ability to be able to do that. And so what we do, we place them, but it's done as a last measure. I'm going to have Dr. Dubiel jump in.
As you're grabbing the mic, I think where I would start with is really that is one of the, to your point, great question, really fits within our strategic plan and our work that we identified this past year as a significant opportunity for us. And so I know that Dr. Dubiel has been working with her team and with district leaders across the system to start to think about how we assess your question in a more profound way and start to provide what do we need to do to get to a place where we can do that, right? So,
Correct.
Dr. Dubiel?
Would you mind repeating the
Yeah.
question?
The question was, if there's a pattern over time, we're getting a significant expense for students being outplaced, right? Why have we not necessarily moved then, if that's the level of expense, or, why have we not moved to bring those services in district, right? And I'll add to whatever you have to say. I have some additional comments I'll make.
Yeah, there's a wide spectrum of needs that we always try to meet. Beyond the different programs that we have within several buildings, when we cannot fulfill or when we cannot meet a student's need within the program, we have our own therapeutic day school. And when that doesn't become an option, there's a lot of conversation of several IEP meetings, including the parents and guardians, where in some circumstances, outplacement would be best. It's usually involving a lot of conversation and a lot of data to support that because of the services that are needed. Some of our outplacements offer a wide array from residential that we couldn't necessarily accommodate through public schooling.
That's fair. I just wonder, are we being proactive with these students, right? So my gumption is we have an idea of the accommodations that they are needing when they're coming into our district, right? Whether it's an assessment or functional behavior, what have you. So what are we doing with that proactiveness so we're not necessarily continuing to add to these expenditures?
Do you want to add? Can I add one thing, Dr. Dewey?
Yeah,
Just
of
one
course.
thing. So I think those things are really student-led and given our current circumstances. And then the question about being proactive, we are proactive in terms of we need to really determine, to your point, how do we get ahead of from our tier 1 instructional supports all the way through to those identified, very personalized, individualized learning experiences where those students have very acute individualized needs. Which is why, for example, in the healthcare system, you're going to have everybody from your primary care or people who don't even go to primary care, they engage in healthy practices, to students who really deserve our extreme attention and support. And we as a community make significant efforts to ensure that those students are supported. What Dr. Dubiel has named and what we're doing this coming year is we're saying, okay, if we have programs like our Therapeutic Days program, what does it look like to go from it's a fringe program to an all-in program, right? And when I say fringe, meaning that right now you heard in our long-range facility plan, it's kind of the facility itself does not have the expansive level of support that it hasn't been invested in the past, which is why when I got here and the board approved it, we went to a long-range facility plan because we said we can't piecemeal this anymore. We have to make substantive investments in our physical plant. I would say the same can be true of every department we talk about, whether it's transportation, our curriculum, our innovation work. Those all require meaningful investments, but you also can't just do it to the loudest voice, because a lot of times it's the voiceless who aren't getting to the table to have those conversations, which is why it was really important for us. And I'm so glad you raised this question, because it really becomes a function of how do we do this in a way where we are really attending to the whole system and not just those people who today are able to come and make public comment tonight. Because there are a lot of people who may have comments about lots of different things. They may not be able to come here today. And it's our responsibility as a district to ensure that we are addressing those needs. And I think your question is right on point, which is why haven't we? Why haven't we made those shifts? Well, there are a lot of reasons behind that, right? From a job market issue to the kinds of things that are in front of us in terms of being able to organize. When we heard the CMSI audit And that group came to us just a little over a year ago and said, if there's anything that this district can do, you all need to plan. You need to organize and you need to plan. That was their primary message when I met with them in closed session, when they did the audit, and they said to us, you need to invest in planning. You need to take time and make time to plan your moves as a district, because there's so many wonderful things in this district, but just a few people are getting the benefit of it. Or some people are getting the benefit sometime. How do we get to all the time? Which is the question I hear you raising. I'm sorry, Yvette, do you want to add that, please?
Yeah, I will reiterate everything you say. We always want to keep our students here. Significant investment will have to be made in staffing, facilities, and resources to take private or outplacement out of the equation. Nevertheless, as far as proactive, one of the things that we do is we have a private day program administrator who works very closely with the number of private day facilities that we work with. And several of our students, we want them back. So we have students that are transitioning back from private day, and we have programs in place, whether it's half day, whether it's checking in with teachers. So the goal is always to bring them back, and we have several students who are also in that scenario.
Dr. Dubiel, can you speak about the investments we made this year to expand, for example, our STARS program, and what the impact of that has been for our students in the STARS program, whereas in prior times, those investments were not there? And so how does that make a difference in terms of this point? And I think it's connected to what you're saying. Thank
Sure.
you.
And I think we witnessed it this evening when we saw the opening day video, and you heard one of the principals. Historically, from what I understand, is when a new STARS program opened in the building, there wasn't enough preparation and or support, and there was a lot of preparation and support that started last school year that included visiting sites, that included doing professional development for all the staff that was having the new STARS program, to checking in over the summer, to ordering a wide array of sensory and enhancements supplies for all of our STARS classrooms, thanks to the work of the occupational leads, to ensuring that we had proper training for a multitude of staff, including our teacher assistants that historically have not had the opportunity to receive certain type of training like de-escalation. So we're very proud of that work. A lot of still work ahead, but it's one of the celebrations that I think we can recognize.
Okay. That's
Any other questions?
Good. Okay. Moving on to 10.1, action item. Approval of personnel report. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the personnel report as discussed and presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Ms. Robinson?
Aye.
Mr. Cerrone?
Aye.
Dr. Murillo?
Aye.
Miss C?
Aye.
Miss Wenmuth?
Aye.
Dr. Polak?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Can I have a motion to adjourn?